Hi everyone, I welcome you all to the new session of HR ABAP. And one of the prerequisites of HR ABAP, I hope everyone present here is having some basic knowledge of ABAP and they understand the concept of how to program in a general ABAP. So starting with the introduction, let us understand what is the difference between ABAP and ABAP HR, what are the different modules available within HR. Some of the modules which I have listed here are personal administration, organization management, time management and payroll. So before starting, let us see what actually is in HR. The main part or the role of HR is to produce the organization hierarchies or the structure of the organization and also the administration of the employees. So now what actually is HR ABAP? HR ABAP is nothing but how you programmatically use the data which is available in HR systems and use the data for reporting, for enhancing your system, for presentations, how exactly we use the concepts of HR ABAP and get the HR data from the system. That is what HR ABAP is about. And let us see what is the difference between ABAP and ABAP HR. As you know, in general ABAP we use the concepts of tables, but in general ABAP, now when you see HR ABAP, we use the concepts of infotypes. In HR ABAP we use the concepts of macros, logical databases, there is the concepts of authorizations and the concepts of infotypes. All these concepts separates HR ABAP with general ABAP. So let us see what actually is an infotype. So before starting, I'll let you know that I would be taking these four mentioned modules like personal administration, organization management, time management and payroll, as most of the HR ABAP coding involves in these four modules. So let's start with personal administration module. Personal administration modules is nothing but it deals with the employee data. When I say employee data, it means employees' professional information, their personal information, information related to banks, their bank accounts, company or personal bank account, their insurance, their medical, all professional related or personal information which are related to employee and which will be used for an organization for maintaining the employee data. This all is part of personal administration module. So let us now start with infotype. What actually is an infotype? As you know, in general ABAP we have a concepts of tables. The same thing, it's with a slight difference, comes with the name of infotype in HR. It's nothing but units of information which are stored for master data in HR systems. And apart from that, we have something called elements of infotypes, time constraints, the concepts of macros, how to use provide statements, and what are the standard program steps in HR, how we can use the master data by using logical database, and how we can use the normal statements or the select queries within HR system and without using logical database, that we'll see. And also one more important thing is we'll be seeing how we can update the infotypes with the use of standard function module. As you all know, in general ABAP we use the direct insert, update, modify statements to update the records or insert the records. But in ABAP HR we use the concepts of standard function modules to directly insert into the infotypes. At last we'll be seeing how we can actually create one infotype. So let's start with in detail what exactly is an infotype. Infotype is nothing but the information units which are used to enter master data in system are called infotypes. These are also used to group related data or fields together. Some of the examples of infotypes are Infotype P0000, Infotype 0002, Infotype 0006, and Infotype 0008. Don't worry about these numbers. I'll take you some of the infotypes, basic master data infotypes, so that you will have some knowledge on what each infotype is used for. And also we'll be seeing what are the elements of infotypes and what are the attributes. So let's start to see what are the elements of an infotype by looking into the attribute screen, which is available in a table called T582A. So this is the screen which is infotype attributes. Don't bother about how we can actually come here. I'll take you through all these screens when we try to create an infotype. So this is an attribute screen of an infotype. I have taken infotype 1 as an example, which says the description as organization assignment. So it says in the general attributes section a field called time constraint. So let us now see what actually is a time constraint. Time constraint indicates whether more than one infotype record may be available at one time. In total, SAP has given us 7 time constraints. So let's now see each one of them one by one. Time constraint 1. Time constraint 1 says that there is no overlapping and no gaps between two records within an infotype. Some of the examples of time constraint 1 are Infotype 0, Infotype 1, and Infotype 2. Now, what is time constraint 2? Time constraint 2 says that there is no overlapping but time gaps are permitted. Some examples are Infotype 0 and Infotype 5. When it says no overlapping and time gaps is permitted means two records cannot overlap one over the other, but they can have some gap between first record and second record. What is time constraint 3? Time constraint 3 says that overlapping and time gaps are permitted. That means there can be a record which, suppose for an example, starts from January to December. There can be another record within the same year which can start from, say, March to December, which means these two records are overlapping, and also there can be the gaps between two records. So apart from this, we have the other 4 time constraints, which are time constraint A, time constraint B, time constraint T, and time constraint Z. Time constraint A is one of the important time constraint which is available. This says only one record may exist, which is valid from 1/1/1800 to 31/12/999. That is start of the period to the end of the period, which is by default in SAP 1/1/1800 to 31/12/999. And it also says splitting and deletion is not at all permissible. One major example of infotype A is infotype 3. The time constraint A is infotype 3. I'll take you through what is infotype 3 and what is the importance of infotype 3 when we look into the payroll module. So apart from this, another important time constraint which we need to understand is the time constraint T. Time constraint T says that whenever we have subtypes within an infotype, we need to use this time constraint, because based on the subtypes also we can have the date. So that is the importance of time constraint T. So now you would be asking, what is a subtype? Subtype is nothing but the further division of infotypes, that is called a subtype. So the next important time constraint for us is time constraint B. Let us see what it says. Time constraint B says that only one record may exist, but its validity will be starting from 1/1/1800 to 31/12/999. Here splitting is not permissible. but the record may be deleted. If you can observe the difference between time constraint A and time constraint B, time constraint says that splitting and deletion is not permissible, but time constraint B says that splitting is permissible but deletion is not permissible. So this is the importance of time constraints. As you can see, I have taken the attributes of the Infotype 1, that is organization assignment. So here in the general attributes type we have a field called time constraint. This specifies that, as you can see in the F4 help of the standard system, you can see all the available 7 standard time constraints which I have explained you just now. So this time constraint, whenever you need pass a time constraint here, it takes that info type, and whenever you try to create a record in that info type, it makes sure it matches the time constraints validations. That is, it checks whether a duplicate record can be entered or the records with overlapping can be entered or not. That kind of validations with each of the time constraint has, it takes care. If time constraint 1 is passed, it makes sure that only the records must have no gaps and no overlappings. That is, every record should have its continuation. Okay, and if at all you are maintaining some time constraint table, you need to specify that time constraint table here. Apart from this, we have other fields which I will take you through when we start with creation of an info type. So now, before start seeing the structures within an info type, let me take you through a standard T code called PA20. This T code is used to see the display part of the HR master data, and in this T code the required fields are personal number and the info type number. As you can see, it says display HR master data. So what is the list of info types and what are the employee related info types? As you can see, in the core employee info type range, you have different info type text which are mentioned, or else in the info type field you just press star and say F4. You will be seeing the list of info types which are available in the system for HR data. See, it says info type 0, the description says actions, info type 1 organization assignment, info type 2 personal data, info type 3 payroll status, info type 6 address, info type 7 planned working time, info type 8 basic pay, info type 9 bank details. These all are the main important info types and are included in the group of HR master data. So if at all you want to look the organization assignment related details of an employee, you need to select that particular info type and say display. Whenever you click on that thing, it takes you to all the organization related information for that employee. As you can see, it says employee number, his personal assignment, his name. This forms the standard header, but the main important info type data is this. As you can see, I have taken you through organization assignment info type. Organization assignment info type or info type 1 is one of the more important or the foundations of personal administration module. Within this organization info type, we have 3 structures which are maintained. First one is enterprise structure, second is personal structure, third one is organization plan or organization structure. Why I am taking you through this is, before starting to see the creation or the structures available in info type, you need to understand how an HR system would be storing the data. So what is an enterprise structure? Enterprise structure is nothing but how exactly the structure or the layout of the enterprise is been set up. Remember, whenever you are in an employee of an organization, there would be some level of hierarchy above you when the hierarchy reaches to the top management itself sees the entire structure of the company. So this enterprise structure is nothing but how exactly the total enterprise or the company is set up, which includes how a company code is set up and what is the name of that company. So to identify each location of the company, we have something called company code. Within a company code, you need to identify for which personal area. Personal area on an overall sense, it refers to the location, in which location you have the company set up. And you have something called personal sub area. Personal sub area is the further division of personal area. And also you need to know the concept of cost center. Cost center is nothing but to which particular cost center an employee's cost would be reported to. That means if you are an employee within a department, so your department would be costed to which cost center. So all the costing related thing you would be reported to this cost center. So this is an overall view of the enterprise structure. So let us see what is a personal structure. As the name itself says, personal, related to employee. Now what is the first field? First field says employee group. It means it groups the list of employees which are active in the system, which are retired, who are external, who are terminated, and who are the casual employees, who are the temporary, who is permanent. So to differentiate this set of or the group of employees, SAP has provided us with the concept of employee group and employee subgroup. See, suppose if you have an active employee, and within this active employee, if you want to know how many of these active employees are salaried, how many of them are non-salaried, or the different classifications you can also provide as per the customizations given through the client. As you can see, salaried, who are the sales personnel, who are the field service personnel. Within this active group of employees, you can differentiate based on the employee group, subgroup. Why I am telling you specifically about this, most of the reporting part when you take off ABAP HR, we need to develop reports based on the employee groups and subgroups, and also based on the employee status. So for that reason, I'm explaining you in detail about the employee group and subgroup. Now let us see what is organization plan. Organization plan or the organization structure, it means how the structure of your organization should be set up. With that I mean, if you are reporting to a department, or if you are an employee within a department, you would be having a manager to whom you would be reporting, and that manager would be the person who is holding that department. And this person or the manager, he would in turn be accountable to some other person who is sitting above him, who is his manager. So all this structure or the layout, what actually is, it all is defined in organization structure. Don't get confused between the organization structure and the enterprise structure. Enterprise structure takes care at the enterprise level. Within an enterprise there could be multiple organizations. So for that reason we have company codes, personal area. So when I say organization structure, it in turn will be related to each of the company code, wherein the different positions and the org hierarchy would be set up. So what all comes within an organization structure? You need a position. What is a position? Position is nothing but what an employee is assigned to. Means you are held up in some position, like you are a programmer or an ABAP HR consultant. So that is your position. And another thing is job. What is actually a job? Job is something which describes your position. Overall, if you see, job says sales representative, but what kind of sales representative, in which particular department sales representative, it comes in position. And all this would be part of your organization unit. That means in which particular organization unit this position belongs to, Suppose you belong to an organization unit of IT. Within an IT, you hold a position of ABAP HR consultant. Suppose you take the position as ABAP HR consultant, but the job says consultant. What kind of consultant is your position? ABAP HR consultant, ABAP consultant. Is this what the position describes? So this is an overall view of the organization assignment. Let us now go and see what are the different structures available within an Infotype. Let us now go to a T code called SE11. As anyone who is aware of General ABAP would be knowing this T code, which says ABAP dictionary. Now you need to select the option of database table and enter PA0001. Remember, all the Infotypes related to personal administration module have a prefix called PA, and it all starts with PA0001. An Infotype is a 4-digit number. Okay, so whenever I say PA Infotype, it means PA 001 to PA 0999. This is the range of personal administration Infotypes. There are different ranges available for different submodules within an HR. So our PA range starts from Infotype 00 to Infotype 0999. Similarly, we have org management Infotypes. This starts from Infotype 1000 to 1999. Similarly, we have time management Infotypes. This range starts from Infotype 2000 to Infotype 2999. Similarly, we have recruitment and other module range, which starts from 4000 to 4999. And also, whatever the custom Infotypes you create for your client or for your projects, it will always start from range from custom Infotype range will start from PA 9000 to 9999. So these are the ranges which are available in HR module, and each of the submodule has their own range of Infotypes. And for the custom Infotypes, we use the range of 9000 to 9999. So let us now see the structures which are available within an Infotype. You go to S11, type Infotype 1 and say display. As you can say, the description says HR Master Records Infotype 1 Organization Assignment. You can see the first field is the normal mandatory field or the client identification field. Below this we have include called PA key. As an ABAP HR consultant, you need to know what are the different fields available in each of these structures, which I would be telling you. This should be on your fingertips, because in every interviews or in every projects or the reporting side, we would be using these fields in our programming. So let us see what is the first structure. First structure is PA key, that is the key for HR master data. What are the different fields within this key? First one is personal number. PERNER or personal number is very important in HR, because all the data which is fetched is always based on the employee number. And also, what is the subtype? Within an Infotype, as I told you, there would be a subtype field. If any Infotype has a subtype value, then you need to use this subtype in your AND conditions. The next field is object identification. How you would identify the objects in case of multiple records based on the object identification. Another important field is SPRPS or the lock indicator. Lock indicator is also an important in HR ABAP programming, because sometimes the administrative or the business users who are actually using the SAP system for employees for payroll or other things, they would be locking the employee records so as to not include them in payroll or for some other purposes. So in order to restrict those employees in our reporting or in our screen layouts or whatever programming you're doing, we need to use this field SPRPS. It's general flag value, which would be marked with X. The two more important fields within the PA key structure is begin date and end date. As I told you, all the HR data which is stored in an Infotype is based on the date ranges. So whenever we fetch the record, it's always based on the begin date and end date, which forms the basis of our criteria to select the records. The next one is sequence number. It says number of Infotype records with the same key. As I told you, HR data is huge and it's based on the date range. Sometimes it happens that within the same date you can update employee records 2 to 3 times. It happens in general production scenario wherein multiple business level users, they might enter data 2 or 3 times. So SAP itself separates those records with the help of OBGPS and sequence number. Coming to the next structure within the standard Infotypes is structure called PSHD1. It says the control fields. One important field within the structure is AEDTM, that is the date on which the data is changed and by whom it is changed. So based on these records, if you're working for any audit log report, then you can use these two fields and you can say on this particular date, if any user has submitted the records, you can fetch based on these two fields. The other important structure and the main one within the standard Infotypes is structure called PS0001. Note that in any Infotype you will have default structure called PS0001 or the PS structure. Remember, whenever you have a PA Infotype, you will have a structure called PS name with that Infotype. As you can see, it says structure. Now what this PS structure will hold? It will hold all your main information as we have seen in your Infotype 1 related to all the three structures. It says BUKRS field, company code, your personal area, employee group, employee subgroup, your organization key, your business area, your personal sub area. This is legal person. As you would be known, there would be a legal person associated with an employee, so you can even store that employee, legal person. And there is a field called ABKRS. ABKRS is an important field which is called payroll area. The details about payroll area I'll take you through when we start payroll module. So apart from this, you need to go through all of the fields which are available in the structure PS0001. If you try to understand each of the fields, your programming would be very much easy for HR ABAP. Now these are the three main structures which are available in each Infotype and which we need to remember it as a priority so that our programming will be very easy. So apart from these three structures which are available in a standard Infotype, if you want to enhance a standard Infotype or you want to include your own fields, SAP provides something called CI includes, which is also available in general ABAPers who would be knowing this. So if you want to include any additional fields as per client requirements, you need to use the CI include and add your fields within that. So now, as you can see, give the description and enter what are the different fields you want to add within the structure so that it will appear on the Infotype 1 screen. So this most of the time will try not to disturb the existing standard infotypes. Better way would be to create a new infotype by copying the existing standard infotype, or if that's not possible, you can directly enhance the standard infotype using the CI includes. So let me now execute this infotype and see what are the different fields which we have and how we can fetch the data. Infotype, the first field says partner, that is employee number. Subtype, Infotype 1 doesn't have any subtype, or object PS, SPS, SPRPS. Well, let me try to execute this for few number of employees and see how exactly the Infotype 1 record would be stored. As you can see, it says employee number. As there is no subtype associated with Infotype 1 or the object OBJPS or SPRPS, as there is no lock indicator. But as you can see, these are my main date ranges, which differentiates a record within the employee number range. Every record will have a begin date and end date, and there would be a change date and a username. Now, as you can see, within an employee I have two records. I have 1000 here and 1000 here, but it's differentiated with date range. My first record starts from 1/1/1995 to 30th June 1995, and see the second record, it starts with 1/7/1995 to 31/12/999. As I showed you in the initial few minutes back, Infotype 1 has a time constraint of 1. Remember what time constraint 1 says? Time constraint 1 says that there should be no overlappings and no gaps. Now you can see there is no overlapping and there is no gap for Infotype 1. Where the first record has ended, immediately the second record has started. So the different important fields which we have which are available in Infotype 1 is again the company code, personal area, employee group, employee subgroup. Here you will also have position, something called position, org unit. You need to remember these fields. Whenever I say org unit, the technical name is ORGEH. You need to remember this as an ABAP HR consultant so that it will be easy for you when you write your programs. KOSTL is cost center, organization unit, position, job. So these are the more important fields which you need to understand. Now this personal administration infotype will give you the data related to an employee. Now how you would identify what an employee status is, what kind of an employee is. Let me again take you back through PA20. Here, as I showed you, first infotype is actions. Actions is nothing but whenever you start an employee into the company, or whenever an employee is brought into the company, how you actually hire him, where you store the data. It all starts with infotype 0, that is actions. Whenever you hire an employee, you store that particular data in infotype 0, that is actions. You store what date he started, what is his employment status as of now, and what is his payment related status, and to which position you are hiring him, under which personal area, and what is his employee group and what is his subgroup. That is, and hiring an employee as a sales representative in corporate UK division on an employee group of active and is a salaried employee. So this is how, where you can store the employee's main hiring details, or his change of position, or his promotion details, or his change of pay scale details. Why I am showing you this is there would be a report from a client side stating active employee report. Then you need to go to this Infotype 0, check for his status, employment status, and say active. Usually this particular configuration will be done by functional, but the standard given statements are active, inactive, retiree, and withdrawn. Active indicator would be 3 always, and inactive or withdrawn would be 0. So your select query should always be, if you are fetching all the active records, it should be based on your employment status field. Similarly, you need to report only active employees who belongs to only corporate UK. Remember that within an organization there would be different locations where the company would be. Suppose if you take care of any major brands, like take SAP itself. SAP is present in US, SAP is present in UK, SAP has an headquarters in Germany, SAP is in India, different countries. So how you exactly identify each particular bunch of employees and how you would be reporting? Then you need to write your queries based on the personal area and the employee groups and subgroups, and you need to display only the active records. So in these kind of scenarios, you need to remember Infotype 0 and Infotype 1. Apart from Infotype 0 and Infotype 1, there is another Infotype called personal data. In this Infotype 2, which is called personal data, you would be storing employees' personal information such as his first name, last name, date of birth, and his nationality, his gender, his marital status. If at all there is a social security number or a national insurance number, you can store that particular information also within the personal data Infotype. This also is part of our master data Infotype. Remember, I was talking about a report just now where you need to display all the set of active employees within a particular personal area who belongs to an employee group 1. So in that reports, even we need to display employee's first name and last name. So for that kind of scenario, you need to come to Infotype 2, check his first name and last name. There will be many other requirements wherein you need to display employee's national insurance number, SSN number, or his birth date, or his marital status. So for that particular kind of information, you need to come here. So the next Infotype for us would be address. Address would be Infotype 6. It stores employee's permanent address, his home address, permanent home address, temporary, his office, his mailing, different kinds of addresses which are possible within an employee or an organization, that all you can store in Infotype 6. The next important master data Infotype for us is bank details. Here you would be storing employees' bank details, his account number, his bank, which location he is actually belonging. So this would be useful again in the same report which would be doing at the last of this personal administration Infotype session, to display employee status, his employee group, his first name, his last name, his bank details, his address, his salary. So this would be part of my personal administration data report. So now if I want to see his payroll related data, there is an Infotype called Infotype 8 or basic pay. In this you would be storing in employees his main salary, how much is his basic pay, what are the different components apart from basic pay he would be having. So in this Infotype you would be storing his how much would be his basic pay. But I'll show you quickly how to create actually Infotype 8 data. It would be very simple. Whenever you are hiring an employee, it would be part of your same action. You would be creating a record and just you will be belonging him to which pay scale area or the pay scale group he would be belonging, and then you need to enter his annual salary and just say save. Then the record will be saved. So this was an overview of the few of the master data info types and how we can extract a report based on this master data info type, say the employees particulars report. So the next process I'll take you through is how we can actually hire an employee. For hiring an employee, we need to remember certain T codes when you start working with personal administration module. One T code which I've showed you earlier is PA20. This is display. This is display of HR master data. Second one is PA30. This is maintenance of HR master data. The next one is PA40. This is called basically actions, wherein you will be having all the actions within an organization which you can run for an employee. See, you can see personal actions. Here you will be having different kinds of actions which is possible within an organization, that is hiring an employee, changing his salary, whether his retirement, or if you're terminating, or if you're recording his time data, or different this like change of position, or your org management is nothing but changing his position or changing his role temporarily. These are all useful as you go in deep for the other modules as well. So as a ABAP HR consultant, we will not be having access to PA40 or PA30 because these are all related to maintenance of data. We will be only having access to PA20, that is only display of data. We just have to look at the particular data and fetch the records. Why I am showing you PA40 is, in some complex scenarios you need to understand how actually the system behaves. Like there is a concept of user exits, wherein suppose you are hiring an employee and you want to pay a joining bonus for an employee whenever he is hiring. So how you would accommodate is, whenever a personal action is triggered, whenever a functional guy or a business user is executing a PA40 action for an employee, automatically I should store a record in Infotype 14, which is recurring payments or deductions. Another one is called Infotype 15, which is additional payments or deduction. So usually these kinds of one-time bonuses, one-time payment will be stored in Infotype 15 called additional payments or deductions. So coming back to our scenario, whenever you hire an employee, you want to pay a joining bonus. So that kind of requirement you can capture only when you understand the concept of PA40. So whenever a PA40 is triggered, you can use PA30 user exit and write the code in that particular user exit. So I'll show you how we can actually hire an employee. Not in detail, I'll just give you an overview what are the steps. I'll select hire and say execute, and just we need to fill in the don't fill in the employee number. It will be, if it is configured in the sense the employee number ranges, if it is configured then it will automatically appear. And you need to enter the start date on which the employee should be hired, his title, whether Mr., Miss, Mrs., his last name, first name, what is his date of birth, what is the type of action, whether it is hiring as a contractor or as an employee or hire applicant, that kind of data. And what is the reason for action? I mean, whether it's a new hire or it's a change of position or attrition due to attrition or as an expansion you are hiring. And you need to mention for which position, for which personal area and sub area, and he belongs to which employee group and subgroup. So when you try to save this information, it will in turn call, this is all based on a concept called info groups and info group menus. What is an info group is, whenever an action, if you want to define an action, basically, so based, whenever you hire an employee, you want to save along with his hiring details, you want to store his basic pay, you want to store his address, you want to store his bank details. You need to group all these info types to one particular group and name it as info group for PA40 hiring action. Then automatically when you hire through that particular action, all these screens will be coming one by one and you can fill in the data and save. So this was an overview of PA40 hiring action. Let us now come back to our presentation and see what is the different topics that are more important to us programmatically. So the next topic is the concept of logical database. Remember, logical database forms a very integral and an important part of HR ABAP programming. So you need to know what actually is a logical database. Logical database is nothing but which groups different tables or the clusters within itself. Some important logical database which we would be using is logical database PNP, PNPCE or PCH. For personal administration module, we will be using logical database PNP or PNPCE. I'll let you know how we can attach a logical database to a report program and what are the different structures which are available in a logical database in one particular example which we'll be seeing in some time from now. And what is the importance of startup selection? What are the get events? We have some events called get burner, get objec, and what is the importance of end of selection in a logical database? Some of the important topics within logical database is the concept of data retrieval in HR. As I told you, the difference between ABAP HR and ABAP is the concept of macros, concept of function modules, concept of logical databases. So as part of that, first thing which we need to understand is what is a macro. Macro is nothing but the predefined statements which are given by SAP to fetch the records. This can be used when we are using the logical databases. Some of the statements are RP provide from last, RP provide from first, and also we need to understand how we can use the provide and provide statements. And I'll let you know what are the standard function modules which are available in SAP HR and how, using those function modules, how we can read or update the master data Infotype. Let us now see the index which I have taken you through for personal administration. So I have shown you an overview of the infotypes, the master data infotypes. I have given you an overview of the personal organization assignment infotype, what are the different structures and what is the infotype of, what is the importance of each of them. And I've shown you in SE16 how we can see the data of each of the infotype. I've shown you in PA20 how we can check the data for Infotype 1, Infotype 0, Infotype 2, Infotype 6, Infotype 8. Let us now go and create a program and see how we can actually use macros, how we can use the logical databases, read the data and update the data through standard function modules. Let us now go to the SAP report editor and create a program and start using the concepts of logical database for reading or using the macros. So I would be using the T code called SE38. I've created a program called ztest_PA1 which says for personal administration module 1. So if you want to create a new program, you just have to click on create, and suppose I'll say 8. I'll say create. You need to fill what is the description of the program. You need to select what kind of the type of the program it is, and mine is an executable program. What is the status, whether it's a production program or a system program or a test program. So ours would be a test program. What is the application? Here you need to select human resources and just save. Now similarly I have created our program. Here in this program I would be using the concept of logical databases. I selected executable program, test program, human resources. Now here we have a field called logical database. Here you need to provide whatever the name of the logical database you have. That is, I am using the concept of PNP logical database, which says HR master data, and you just say save. It gets saved. Now come to change. Because I've already written some code, I'm clicking on change. First, let me tell you what are the different steps which we need to include in logical database report program apart from a normal general ABAP program. The first statement which I would be using is statement of tables. Here, whenever you are using logical database, you need to provide a statement called tables pernor. And the next thing would be the use of statement infotypes. Here, whichever infotype you want to use for your report programming, just have to specify that infotype name here. If I want to fetch the data from infotype 0 actions, I would be writing infotype 0. If I want from organization assignment, I'll write it 1, from 2, and then end. So this is how you just need to provide the list of infotypes from which you need to get the data. The next important thing is the use of getPernor event. Remember, these three are an important whenever you use logical databases. First is table pernor, use of infotype statement, and getPernor event. GetPernor is a loop within itself. That is, whenever you declare a statement called tables pernor, it fetches all the employees available within an HR database system and keeps in the buffer memory. Whenever you have the getPernor event, all that action happens of getting all the employees and storing in the buffer memory. So what happens when a getPernor event triggers? Whenever a getPernor event triggers, all the infotypes which you have declared here under infotype statements will get filled up with all the data whichever is available. Let us now see what actually is tables pernor statement and what is first the pernor structure. Remember, when I showed you infotype 1, I showed you a field which had personal number pernor, but this logical database structure pernor is something different. It is not a single field called personal number. It itself will have complete structure which will have the PS structure of that particular infotype from 0 and also all the three structures which we have declared. So apart from those three standard structures, you need to remember the structure of pernor and what are the fields you would be getting by default within this with the declaration of pernor statement, what are the fields you would be getting by default in the logical database. Now you need to declare, after declaring infotypes and getPernor statement, remember whenever after start of selection, whenever getPernor event triggers, infotype statements data will get filled. All these concepts are by default available in logical database. So before starting to show you how to use macros and all, I'll show you just by passing logical database PNP into the attribute screen and passing tables and get partner, how our selection screen would be looking. So this is the standard selection screen which comes by default whenever you use logical database called PNP. So this is the screen which is divided into period selection and selection. So what is period? It says total 6 radio buttons which has different options for us. One is today, current month, current year, up to today, from today and other period. When you say today, it will take side datum or the current date records as the begin date and end date and fetches all the data from the system. Remember, all this data fetching will have internal logic by logical database itself. When you click current month, it picks up start of the current month to the end of the current month. For example, if I say 20th March, it picks up start date as 1st March and the end date as 31st March. Similarly, for current year, from January to December, up to today indicates from the start of period till today, that is from 1/1/1800 till today's date. Now from today means from today's date it will start the your begin date. Apart from this, if you want to provide any other date ranges for the data selection, you need to click other period and provide the data selection period. Remember, this two options you have for providing the date range. One is data selection period and another one is person selection period. Data selection period is nothing but whatever date range you provide within this data selection period, it will fetch all the data. And another one is person selection. Person selection corresponds to the person data which will be picked up whenever you provide the date ranges between these fields. That is, what is the person, that is, what is the personal numbers with which you want to fetch between this date range. And next is personal number, employment status, company code. This is the default selection for getting how exactly you want the data based on what conditions. Like you can specify a single partner or you can expand this multiple selection and give the range as well. And what is the employment status which you can use to fetch your data? Remember, whatever data you provide on this selection screen, logical database validates this input and fetch the data as per this input only. Suppose if I say employee number 10 and if I say status is active, it will get me only the data for employee number 10 and his active status. Suppose if I say up to today and say 10, I get only employee number 10 data. Similarly, if I remove employee number 10 and say only active and say execute, it fetches data record for all the employees available in the system which have a status called 3. So this is the importance of logical database. It does all the programming part of fetching the data for yourself. Let us now see how this is possible through the logical databases. Now the first purpose is to use the now let us start with the first concept of macros. As you can see, I have declared table statement, Infotype statement and some variables. I have given start of selection. Remember, if I am not providing the other events such as my initialization event, my start of selection, these are all possible additionally, but for our sample program I am directly coming you to concepts each of this. All this inclusive with this event will be taking in one final example which I have discussed with you regarding the employee details in the personal administration module. So apart from this, initialization, startup selection, your data declarations, how exactly you want the other presentations or validations on selection screen, all those are very much possible by using logical database as well. So coming back, I have passed the startup selection event and additional get partner event for logical database. So now if I want to fetch the Infotype 1 data, so I would be using a macro called rp provide from last p0001. The space is nothing but if there is any subtype available, you need to specify that subtype number. Again, that would be 4-digit number in quotes. So this would be the standard syntax of using rp provide macros. So here in this case I don't have any subtypes, so I'm just passing space and pn-begda and pn-enda. Now you would be having a question, what is pn-begda and pn-enda? pn-begda is nothing but your begin date. pn-enda is nothing but your end date. Whenever you use logical database, SAP by default gives you the standard fields which will have your default dates set as begin date and end date, and these will be stored in two variables called pn-begda and pn-enda. I have tried to find out where exactly it stores. As you can see, it is available in the standard include LDB PNP com, where you have the begin date of type D and end date of type D. So how we are representing is pn-begda. So this is how we can fetch the records in the pn-begda and pn-enda by default in logical database. Apart from this, we also have other fields. One of them important is PARP, payroll period, PARG, selection input. So I'll tell you what exactly is payroll area and payroll period. What is the period modifier when we start the payroll module. Apart from this, we have something called PNP-SW found. As you all know, we have in ABAP, general ABAP, something called SAP. Whenever you use logical database and macros, you need to verify your SAP conditions, SAP conditions using the PNP-SW found. That is, if you have the data in your macro statements, your PNP-SW found will give you a value of 1. If there is no data found in your macro, it gives you a value of 0. So let us now come back to our program and analyze this line of code. This rp provide from last. When I say rp provide from last, it means fetch all the latest records starting in from last, that is the latest to the oldest, that is from descending to the ascending order, from Infotype 1, no subtype, within this date range, pn-begda and pn-enda. Now another question after pn-begda and enda. What values I am getting in pn-begda and enda? Because I am not passing any values of begda and enda. Whenever you select the period selection from the standard selection screen, you will have some records like today, up to today, current month, current year, or the date ranges. So based on that, you will be getting, based on this, I will be getting my pn-begda and enda. If I select current month, my begin pn-begda will be current month start date and my end date will be current month end date. So all those values will be coming by default in my pn-begda and enda. If at all this is success, I will get PNP-SW found equal to 1. So how to check it? Let us now put a breakpoint and see how we can check this. I'll just execute this program for you and I'll say suppose I want to select up to today for one particular employee, say employee number 10, and his status is active. So I'll just say execute. I got one employee, but I want to debug. Okay, I'll come back to my selection screen and then I'll say just /h. Remember, /h is to debug the existing report without providing any default debug options. Now I will just say execute. Now what I wanted to show you is, as you all know, this step is single step, that is F5. This is to execute a block. This is to execute the complete block, and this is to completely execute and come out. Okay, now if I press F6, it comes to Infotype statement. Let us now see what value our Infotype statements has. As of now, nothing. So my declaration is done. As you can observe, the cursor has directly come to end of selection. This is because whenever you pass a getPerner event, its end is always, that is because getPerner is a loop, and this getPerner gets end only when it comes across the statement of end of selection. So that is, for that reason only, it directly jumps out. But in this process, it has not skipped reading whatever the code we have written. It fetches the record by default and directly jumps to end of selection. As you can see, my P0001 already has some data. So let me now again try to debug. This time I'll go back and put my explicit debug points at my if conditions. I'll say session breakpoint, and I'll say execute up to today for this personal number and his status. Now if I try to execute, it's not coming. Okay, no problem. I'll just say /h. Could be I would have switched off it again by double clicking. Let me change it back to vertical and come here and give another breakpoint here. Okay, let me now try. Yeah, it comes properly now. Now if you observe, my getPerner has executed and my P0001, there is some data, but apart from this I have declared Infotype 2, 6 and 8. So if you want to see the data, you can just type those Infotype names and you can see the data. So this is the advantage of using logical database and the Infotype statement. As you can observe, the data is already been populated in these structures, and we'll check for Infotype 2 as well. So now you can ask me a question like, why are we using macros when the logical database by itself has given us the record statements? So now if you see, my logical database gives me, if I double click and see, it gives me the latest record always. But internally, suppose if there are multiple records, my LDB gives me those multiple records in my format of internal table. So there could be multiple records. So when macros would be useful is, you don't know for each employee how many records you would be having. So for that reason we use rp provide from last, so that it will always fetch the active record from the list of records for each of the employee, and it will give you in the same P0001 structure. Similarly, now if I say press F5, it comes down, it will read my first data. Now you can see I have selected some radio button there. My PN/BECDA and PN/ENDA should have some values. See, I said up to today, and it gives me this from 0101 1800 to current date. So that is the importance. Apart from this, other standard structure fields will also get filled up. Now, as I told you, if there is a success, we will have some value here in pace.The found. That means my size of RC is 0, that is success. Now I'll try to read my Infotype 2 records. Let us first see how many records we actually have. Okay, this employee also has only one record. In a scenario where you have multiple records and you want to see the first record, similarly you can use the earlier macro just by changing the last 4 digits from last to FRST. That means RP provide from first, from Infotype 2, without a subtype and within this date range. So it will fetch you the exact records. And again you need to check the PNP SW found value as success. If it is success, for our test reasons I'm just displaying the employee number, the begin date, his first name and his last name. As you can see, again it directly jumps to end of selection. This is the end of the program. Now this is also an important part whenever you come across logical databases. This is the concepts of buffers which are specifically available in HR. The use of this is whatever the value it has fetched logical database in buffer, it will always initialize whenever your end of selection has been reached. Now if I say F6, it will refresh all the structures whichever it has filled up, and then it will come out and say execute. So this is the importance of logical database. With minimal coding and without any select statements, I have fetched the data. Only part which I have done is to display the data. That is the importance of logical database. And that is how you can use the macros. So that was all about the macros. You have different other macros to read the Infotype as well, like RP read INFTY is a macro which you can use to read the data. But as you already have logical database and you have used these macros, it will not be much useful for us in this program.